My name is Linda Johnson after my husband passed away. Life in the Johnson household changed dramatically. Still my days moved on steadily as I cared for my mother-in-law Daniel. I worked from home as an illustrator while tending to her every need. My son Jake had moved out after finding a job, leaving only the two of us in this large house. For someone like me who lost my parents to an accident at a young age and was raised by relatives, this house was finally the family I had longed for, at least until my husband Thomas passed away. But living with Daniel was far from peaceful. She had grown up as an only daughter in a wealthy family, always getting her way to her. I was still the poor girl she looked down upon as her inferior daughter-in-law. Linda, this dish is a bit bland, don't you think? What happened to those cooking skills from your restaurant job? Her voice was laced with sarcasm as she spoke from her bed. I'm sorry, Daniel, I'll make it more flavorful next time, I replied quietly but deep inside. Her words felt like tiny thorns piercing me. Every complaint she made was about small, insignificant things. Even hiring a helper a few times a week drew her. A daughter-in-law should care for her elders herself. Isn't that natural? There were moments when I wondered if I should have left this house when my husband died, but this place held precious memories of Thomas and Jake. It was the house where Jake grew up and where I spent years building our life. So no matter how much Daniel hurt me, I endured it somehow. My brother-in-law, Robert, and his wife Brandy lived nearby, but they never helped. Robert had been spoiled since childhood and had never worked seriously in his life. Daniel dude on him despite his lack of responsibility. I noticed Daniel's savings and pensions slowly disappearing after Thomas's passing. Mother, haven't there been a lot of withdrawals from your bank account recently? Her response still lingers in my mind. Robert needed some money. He's the eldest son after all. I bit my tongue. I knew Robert was a spendthrift. Brandy, too, was someone who splurged on luxury brands while neglecting her household duties. Yet Daniel never complained about Brandy. Brandy is such a sweet girl. A daughter-in-law should know how to navigate situations gracefully. Hearing those words made my chest tighten with frustration. No matter what I did, I realized Daniel would never accept me. Robert and Brandy moved closer to the family home shortly after my father-in-law died. My father-in-law had always been strict and disapproved of Robert's behavior. I assumed Robert and Daniel must have felt relieved when he passed away. He's the eldest son, so of course he should be close to this house. Yet whenever I asked Robert to help with her care, he would always avoid it. I'm busy with work, Linda. Brandy has a lot on her plate too. Work I had never seen Robert work seriously in my entire life. As for Brandy, I had heard she didn't even manage the household properly, but Daniel never scolded her. One day Jake returned home. Mom, I have some news. I'm getting married. Seeing his happy expression, my chest grew warm. The only reason I had managed to endure this house for so long was because of Jake. Really? Oh, that's wonderful, Jake. I hugged him tightly, feeling a tear of joy swell in my eyes. Thomas, Jake is going to be happy, isn't he? I whispered silently to my late husband, but even as I celebrated Jake's happiness, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen to my life and Daniel's care now. Shortly after Jake's visit, Daniel suffered a stroke. She woke up in the hospital, her voice faint, repeating over and over, I want to go home. My husband and I had once discussed putting her in a care facility. How heartless can you be? Are you trying to shame us by sending Mother to a facility? This house is everything to me. I want to stay here. Her voice carried the pride of a matriarch and her attachment to the house she had protected. Linda, we'll manage this together. Back then, Thomas's strong and supportive words had saved me. But now he was gone. On caregiving was never easy from the beginning. Every day I heard hurtful whispers from Robert and Brandy. Poor Mother. I wonder if Linda is Even caring for her properly makes sure you sit her up straight or her back will hurt. The two of them never once lifted a hand to help, but they always had something to say. Their cruel words hurt me deeply, but Thomas's support had kept me going. Don't let their words get to you, Linda, you're doing enough. His encouragement was my rock, but then one day Thomas suddenly collapsed. He came home from work complaining of a headache, lay down, and never woke up again. It was a stroke, sudden and cruel. During the funeral, Robert and Brandy didn't bother to show up until it was over. It was Jake who stayed by my side and helped me. Mom, Dad had a beautiful funeral. He would have been proud. Hearing Jake's words, I finally let the tears fall. Life after Thomas' passing became even harder. I continued caring for Daniel while dealing with Robert and Bry's neglect. Mom's pension, come on, lend me some, I'll pay it back soon. It wasn't just once or twice that Robert came asking for money. Daniel, instead of stopping him, would easily hand it over. Robert is in trouble. We have no choice. I knew the inheritance Thomas had arranged before his death. Daniel must have inherited a considerable amount, but Robert had spent his share. Now they relied entirely on her savings and pension. Linda, you should dress a little nicer. Look at me. You need to sparkle a little. Brandy, wrapped in designer brands, laughed as she spoke behind her. Daniel nodded approvingly, which made my frustration boil over. On top of that, Robert and Brandy spread rumors about me. Linda's only doing all this for the inheritance. You know, hearing those words made me feel a strange mix of anger and disbelief. Despite paying for everything, the caregiver, medicine, and living expenses, they assumed it was unnatural if I ignored them. Their words became even sharper. See, she's ignoring us again. That's why I can't stand her. Even in those moments, I kept reminding myself of one thing: this house held Thomas's memories. It was the home where Jake had grown up. I couldn't give up that easily. The tiles at the end entrance were chosen by Thomas. He had compared colors over and over and finally smiled, saying, "This one feels right." In the living room, faint traces of Jake's childhood scribble still remained. "I love you, Dad," he had written in uneven, childlike lines. Seeing those remnants made my chest tighten, but relying on these memories to keep going was wearing me down. Every time I entered Daniel's room, her words stung like daggers. "Linda, breakfast still isn't here. What are you doing?" I smiled as I placed the tray down. "Sorry to keep you waiting today. It's rice porridge and soup." "Oh, rice porridge again. You're getting lazy, aren't you?" I wanted to argue, but my exhaustion swallowed the words. I only managed to mumble a faint apology. Stepping out of her room, I leaned against the wall and sighed deeply. "Is this really okay?" I asked myself silently, but I knew there would be no answer. I imagined Thomas's voice as I had done so many times before. "You're doing great, Linda." I clung to that memory even though it felt like it was fading away into the fog. Why is it that no matter how hard I try, nothing changes? As I walked back into the living room, a pile of unpaid bills caught my eye. I was paying for everything: the caregiver, medicine, and the rest of the household expenses. How much longer could I keep this up? At that moment, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake. "Mom, are you doing okay? I want to bring my fiancé over soon. Do you have a good day for that?" Reading those words brought a brief warmth to my heart. "Jake, I just want you to be happy." But even that moment of hope was shattered by Daniel's voice. "Linda, turn on the TV for me, will you?" "Yes, right away," I replied, with a forced smile behind that smile. I felt myself slowly disappearing. Is this really okay? I kept asking myself, but no answer came. Jake came home one evening while I was preparing dinner. I heard the front door open and instinctively stopped what I was doing. Looking up, "I'm home, Mom." His bright voice echoed through the kitchen, and my heart leapt. Wiping my hands on my apron, I rushed to the entrance. Jake standing there was my son, taller and more grown up than I remember. His broad shoulders and matured face made me pause, seeing just how much he had grown. "Why didn't you call to say you were coming? I wanted to surprise you. Plus, I just wanted to see your faces." Simple words warmed my heart, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "Don't cry, Mom. It hasn't been that long." He laughed, though I could see the faint embarrassment on his face. I know, but seeing you today makes me so happy for the first time in a long while." My tightly wounded heart felt a moment of release. "I've got something to tell you, Mom." "What is it?" "I'm getting married." The words froze me in place, my heart skipping a beat. "Really? You're getting married?" "Yeah, I want you to meet her. She's an amazing person." Hearing the joy in his voice, my chest swelled with emotion. "Oh, that's wonderful. Jake, we met at work. She's kind, gentle. Honestly, she reminds me of you, Mom." He said it so casually, but his sincerity shone through. My heart warmed as I realized how happy he was. "And Mom," he paused for a moment, hesitating, "after we get married, I want you to live with us." For a moment, my mind went blank. Live with Jake and his wife, it was something I had secretly wished for, but I never thought it would happen. "But what about your grandmothers?" "I know it's complicated, but I don't want you to carry everything alone anymore." His words were filled with kindness and determination. I felt tears building up again, but I held them back. "Jake, I appreciate it, but it's not that simple." "I know, Mom, but we're family. Let's figure it out together." His gaze was steady, and all I could do was nod silently. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Jake's words echoed in my mind, "Come live with us." It felt like a dream, yet reality quickly sobered me. "What about Mother?" I knew Jake's fiancée couldn't be burdened with her care. My thoughts swirled in circles as I stared at the dark ceiling. What am I trying to protect? I had spent 10 years sacrificing my life for Daniel, and now I hesitated to choose a new path. If I leave, what will happen to her? Images of Robert and Brandy flashed through my mind. Would they really take care of her? I already knew the answer, of course. Not. I whispered aloud, bitterness rising in my chest. They just leave her. The thought made me angry, but it also deepened my despair. I curled up under the blanket, tears streaming down silently. "Thomas, what should I do?" I searched for his voice in my memory, but all I could see was his fading smile. A few days later, Jake spoke to Robert about Daniel's care. When he returned home, his face was tense and filled with anger. "Mom, you won't believe what they said." "What happened?" "Robert said I should take Grandma with me. He and Brandy have no intention of taking care of her." His voice trembled with frustration. "They even said terrible things about you, Mom." Hearing that, my heart sank. "Jake, I don't want you to worry about this. Don't say that, Mom. This isn't just your problem." I appreciated his words, but at that moment, Daniel said something shocking. "I always thought you saw me as a burden, Linda." A burden. Her words hit me like a sharp slap. "You're just here for the inheritance, aren't you? But you won't get a single cent. All of it will go to Robert and Brandy." I froze. My chest tightened painfully as I stared at her cold, unyielding expression. "After everything I've done for you these past 10 years, is that what you really think of me?" My voice shook, but she remained unchanged, her demeanor calm, almost smug. At that moment, I made up my mind. "I understand. I'll leave this house." Daniel's face turned pale, the smugness vanishing in an instant. "What, you're joking, right?" "Oh, I'm not joking. I've paid for everything, your care, the household, all of it from now on. Robert and Brandy can take care of you." Daniel's face grew increasingly anxious. "Oh, they can't handle it. They don't care about me like you do." "Oh, that's not my concern anymore. You chose them, didn't you?" My voice was steady, but I could feel the years of bottled up anger bubbling beneath it. Daniel's shoulders shook as she tried to respond. "What am I supposed to do without you?" "I don't know, but Robert and Brandy are the ones you should rely on." My words struck her silent. For the first time, I saw her fear. I turned to Robert and Brandy, who had been called to the living room. What the hell, why should we take care of her? We're busy, we thought you'd keep handling everything. If that's the case, you can decide to place her in a facility. I won't stop you. Robert's eyes widened, and I could see him finally grasping the weight of the situation. Fine, we'll do it, but don't expect us to do it like you did, he muttered, his voice bitter and filled with resentment. I turned to Daniel. One last time, I hope you'll be happy with your choice. Without waiting for RESP response, I turned away. I packed my things quickly, years of burdens piling up in each bag as I left. Through the front door, Daniel's shouting voice followed me. Linda, come back. But I didn't turn around. I whispered silently to myself, goodbye, Mother. I took my first step outside the house, the cool air brushing against my face. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of freedom. The night was calm, quieter than I had ever known. Nautic before all I could hear was the sound of my own footsteps, steady and resolute. After leaving Daniel's house, I moved in with Jake and his fiancée, Sophia. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. Their home was warm and filled with a quiet peace that I had almost forgotten. Mom, you can relax now. You don't have to carry everything by yourself anymore. His words brought tears to my eyes, but this time, they were tears of relief. Sophia welcomed me with open arms, her bright smile easing my hesitation. Linda, I'm so happy to have you here with us. Her kindness and warmth made me feel like I belonged for the first time in years. Days passed, and I gradually settled into my new life. I helped with small chores around the house while continuing my work as an illustrator. Every day, Jake and Sophia showed their appreciation. Thank you, Linda. You've been such a big help. Hearing those words made my heart feel light. It was such a small thing, yet it meant everything to me. I hadn't realized how lonely I had been until I finally felt seen and appreciated. One evening while preparing dinner, Sophia entered the kitchen with a smile. You finished so early today, Linda. I thought I'd help out a little since I had time. You're always so thoughtful. Thank you. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, and I nearly cried at the simple gesture. I had spent so long carrying everything alone that this small act of care felt overwhelming. We're really lucky to have you. You know, her words stayed with me as we set the table together. Later that night, the three of us sat around the dinner table sharing simple conversation, laughter, and warmth. At that moment, I realized how far I had come. This life, this quiet, ordinary happiness was something had fought for. One day, Sophia approached me with a shy smile, her hand resting on her stomach. Linda, I wanted to tell you something. What is it? We're going to have a baby. Her words stopped me in my tracks. I looked at her, my heart swelling with joy. Sophia, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both. Tears welled up in my eyes as I reached out to hold her hands. Thank you for sharing this with me. Of course, your family. After all, her words echoed in my mind. Family. After everything I had been through, I finally felt like I was part of one again. As time passed, Sophia's belly grew, and I busied myself preparing for the baby's arrival. I found joy in the little tasks, folding tiny clothes, preparing meals, and supporting her mom. You're really excited about this, huh? Of course, I can't wait to meet my grandchild. His laughter filled the room, and I felt my chest swell with happiness. The days that followed were filled with small but precious moments. On quiet afternoons, I would sip tea with Sophia, talking about the future. Have you thought of any baby names yet? Not yet, but I'll start thinking about it soon. Her gentle laugh brought warmth to my heart. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to look forward to the future. When the baby finally arrived, I held the tiny life in my arms and felt a tear roll down my cheek. Welcome to the world, little one. At that moment, everything I had endured seemed to fade into the past. The pain, the loneliness, and the years of struggle had led me here to this moment of peace. Months passed, and life in Jake and Sophia's home gradually settled into a rhythm. Every morning I would see them off to work, preparing meals and caring for the house. I found happiness in the smallest of moments. Hearing Jake's laughter or Sophia's cheerful voice, their gratitude for my presence made all the difference. One quiet afternoon, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, Sophia approached me. "Linda, I've been meaning to say what is it. Thank you for everything you've done for us." Her words caught me off guard, and for a moment I didn't know how to respond. "I should be the one thanking you. You've given me a family again." Sophia smiled warmly, and I felt a deep sense of peace that evening. As we sat around the dinner table, Jake turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, are you happy?" His question made me pause. "Yes, Jake. I truly am." For the first time in years, I could say those words without hesitation. As I looked at Jake, Sophia, and my grandchild, I realized that I had finally found my place. The shadows of the past no longer held me down. Thomas's smile flashed in my memory, and I felt his presence, as if he were telling me, "Well done." I whispered silently into the quiet air, "Thank you, Thomas. Life isn't always kind, but sometimes it leads us to the moments we truly deserve." I sat back, watching my family laugh and talk, my heart full of gratitude and hope. This was my home, my family, my future. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this article. Remember to like and subscribe for more.